Great, thank you. So good afternoon, I'm Shauna Sherman, Acting Manager of the San Francisco Public Library's African American Center, and we are so grateful to host the Before Columbus Foundation's American Book Awards ceremony in its 41st year today. First, we wanted to say that here in this online environment in a continuing pandemic, the San Francisco Public Library stands with the Black Lives Matter movement and supports all efforts to end structural, systematic, and institutional racism and inequality in our communities. And we are committed to the ongoing work for race equity. We also want to acknowledge that today we gather here on land and in the ether on numerous unceded lands and here on lands of the Ohlone people. We are committed to uplifting the name of these lands and community members from these nations with whom we reside together. Before we get started, a few reminders for upcoming events. First off, vote. The election's coming up on November 3rd, so please head to the polls when you can. In March and April 2021, we're going to be hosting our One City, One Book event, and this year's selection is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Check out the book through SFPL to go. Through One City, One Book, we encourage members of the community to read the same book at the same time and talk about it. And then coming up this Wednesday, we have a Filipinx event, a reading event with Barbara Jane Reyes, Rochelle Cruz, Jan Henry Gray, and Alden Valdez. That's on October 28th. And coming up in November on the 11th, we're so excited to have Isaac Julian in conversation with Angela Y. Davis, moderated by Sarah Lewis, in partnership with the McAvoy Foundation for the Arts and the Museum of the African Diaspora. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Justin DeMong, Chairman of the Before Columbus Foundation and Administrator of the American Book Awards. He will be leading today's award ceremony. Justin?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin DeMong. I am the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Before Columbus Foundation and would like to welcome everyone to the 41st Annual American Book Awards. As many of you know, the Before Columbus Foundation has been weaving a vision of American literature from a thread that exists long before the United States of America. Many of our winners this afternoon provide an even deeper experience of what this vision can be illuminated as. We are very fortunate to have some of our directors with us this afternoon, including the founder, Ishmael Reed, as well as Poet Laureate of California, Poet Laureate of the United States, formerly, Juan Felipe Herrera, and author and political commentator, Wahajat Ali. I would begin by thanking our friends at the San Francisco Public Library for hosting the 41st Annual American Book Awards, and also the Academy of American Poets for their generous support of the Before Columbus Foundation and the ceremonies this afternoon. To begin, I would quote from the eminent Frederick Douglass, "Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted by either words or blows or both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress." All of the winners of the American Book Award this year have, in one way or another, refused to submit quietly. All of the winners of the award this year, in one way or another, have helped illuminate the path towards freedom. I would like to begin by welcoming one of the finest poets working in America today, the wonderful Reginald Dwayne Betts, who received the American Book Award this year for his collection, Felon.
Columbus Foundation. You know, I've been writing for a minute, and I always thought that being honored with an American Book Award would be one of the real heights of my career. And of course, part of this is because I began reading Ishmael Reed when I was in prison. I mean, reading Mumbo Jumbo changed so much of what I thought could be done with story and narrative. And so I'm really humbled to receive this honor. I'm humbled to be in the company of the other award winners. And like, for real, it's just to be acknowledged really for like doing something that's dope with the craft. You know, I wrote a book called Felon. I wrote a book about what it means to be incarcerated, what it means to walk away from that, what it means to really deal with your demons. And I wrote that book not just as some like story about myself, but as a story of friends and people I care about and people I don't even know. And I wrote it, you know, trying to craft something that was really good art and to be acknowledged by the Before Columbus Foundation, to be acknowledged with this award, with this particular mission, is a thing that both humbles me and sort of unsettles me a bit, because I survived prison by believing certain things might be possible, but I never dreamed of a moment like this. And so, you know, I thank you, Mr. Ishmael Reed, and I thank everybody who put work into selecting the winners this year. And I'm really thankful to be in the company of folks.
And joining us to introduce the poet Sara Borjas, winner of the American Book Award for Heart Like a Window, Mouth Like a Cliff, Juan Felipe Herrera.
Mr. Herrera, you need to unmute yourself, please.
I'm talking to myself. I was talking to myself. This is really a great pleasure for me to introduce Sara Borjas, and also to be part of the Before Columbus Foundation board with the rest of the team. And it's such a beautiful thing to do, to honor writers, to honor new writers, to honor daring writers, and all the good peoples that are putting words down and putting their expanding their minds and embracing all our communities in one way or another. I have a couple of notes, but really, to tell you the truth, Heart Like a Window, Mouth Like a Cliff is exactly like it sounds. It's sharp, it's see-through, it breaks, and it falls. And the falls are deep, wide, and explosive. It's incredible. It's an incredible collection. You read it just like seen through a window. You read it very clearly. You see many scenes, the scorching struggle and transformations of a woman's voice, of a female body, and all the scorching encounters in Pocha, in a Pocha being. Split in half, split into quarters, relationships, family, origins, who am I, where I'm going, and most of all, her burning heart, or her burning desire, or her burning interconnections with life, family, relationships, gender. It's just incredible and fiery. So I really salute Sara Borjas for this incredible accomplishment, and we all do. And Sara, of course, is from Fresno and was a lecturer at UC Riverside and developed a Verbal Coliseum, a most interesting project and class. We'll talk about that at some other time, but she's very experimental and also very direct. And one of the lines in her Ars Poetica in this book is, "Let me live again." And that tells you what's inside, what's burning inside this text. So let us salute Sara Borjas for heart like a window, mouth like a cliff. That's all the words I have. It's all in the book.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and for listening. Sometimes I feel I was born needing an apology, and I fought through my life demanding it from the wrong people. Thomas Transtromer wrote, "Sometimes my life opened its eyes in the dark." In the dark of this book, I learned I don't want to die without forgiving my mom, my dad, and myself. This is why I wrote this book. I want to live beyond shame, which I recognize as just another tactic adopted from our oppressors. I wrote this book because in my heart, I want to love better. I wrote this book because I want to see my parents as whole people and love them wholly. I wrote this book because I didn't want my heartbreak or theirs to be for nothing. I never wanted to be right, but I would be lying if I said I didn't want to at least be recognized. I'm tired of shrinking and of being afraid of being my whole big ass self. I want my dignity, and I want the dignity my family deserves and that Black, Indigenous people of color deserve. All of it. Thank you to everybody at the Before Columbus Foundation for this wild honor, which is my largest honor in this life, other than being born to my parents, Francisco Borjas and Criselda Garcia in Fresno, California. Oh, sorry, Criselda Gracia in Fresno, California. My bad, Mom. Thank you to my mom and dad for your willingness and work to be the complicated subjects of this book. Thank you to the teachers, artists, family, and friends who helped me be as big as I truly am. Angel, my sister Amelia, Emil, Rosa, my Uncle Harvey, Uncle Richard, Julia, Vanessa, Tongo, my Ninos and Ninas, and everybody in my Canto Mundo family. I want to thank Carmen Jimenez Smith for, as a publisher, taking a risk on something that should have never been considered a risk. And as a person, seeing me when I didn't yet have the words and lifting me up so I could find them and then loving me because of them. Thank you to Sara, Susie, Myrna, Natalie, and Blas at Noemi for making this book. Thank you to the people who have used their various privileges to lift me up rather than seek absolution. Thank you, oldies. Thank you, Black music and Black culture. Thank you, Fresno, my students, colleagues, and co-conspirators. The reliability of Crop Rose and how you can see all the way down no matter what. Books like Whereas by Layli Long Soldier, Crush by Richard Sykin, Blood by Shane McCrae, and My Other Tongue by Rosa Alcala, Rumi, Punk Poetics, The Word No out of any woman of color's mouth, Lifetime Movies, Danielle Steele, Boxcar Children series, Oranges from My Dad's Garden, my mom's sense of humor, all shit talkers everywhere, my sister's ruthless sentimentality, and the friends who have supported me in my most messy moments, which were my most fragile. I couldn't say one true word without you. I want to dedicate this award to the time my mom called me and said, I don't want to die like this. To each time someone has chosen to tell the truth, and no longer uphold a lie that makes them feel small. To each time someone has chosen to love with dignity rather than silence. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sara. In the arc and panorama of American poetry, Bob Kaufman remains a singular figure. Like many of the jazz masters that he admired, he writes in a voice that is uniquely his and recognizably his own. As part of the Beat generation, for most of the last several decades, he has largely been written out of the official histories. The book, Collected Poems of Bob Kaufman, published by City Lights last year, edited by Neeli, Cherkovski, Raymond, Foye, and Tate Swindell, does the lion's share of the new work of reviving and resuscitating Bob Kaufman's proper place in the history of international literature. Composed of his three major works, as well as adding a supplement of a major chapter in his poetry of unpublished works, Collected Poems of Bob Kaufman receives the American Book Award this year. Joining us, Raymond Foye, a man who has played such a positive role in the legacy of Bob Kaufman, joining us by video. Raymond Foye.
My name is Raymond Foye. I'm one of the editors of the Collected Poems of Bob Kaufman, along with Neeli, Cherkovski, and Tate Swindell for City Lights Books. I want to thank everyone at the American Book Awards and Before Columbus Foundation, in particular Justin Demange and Ishmael Reed, for this recognition of Bob Kaufman's work. It's been a long time in coming. Kaufman's work has existed in the shadows and obscurity for many years, and it's been very gratifying to see it take its place in society in the year 2020, because he simply has so much to say and to offer us about these times. His poems about racism, about institutionalized violence, his jail poems, poems against capital punishment, the poems about the Holocaust of the Native Americans, but also certain things I didn't recognize the first time reading him. He has a lot of poems about the effects of advertising, television, Hollywood, and the media on people's consciousness, and how this was going to result in a gradual disengagement with reality and a reality problem, which we can see taking place today. Bob's a very prophetic poet, and that just means his ideas were ahead of their time, as were Ishmael Reed's ideas with Before Columbus Foundation, ideas that seemed so idealistic at the time and now are simply understood by people as necessity. So it's been a beautiful thing to see these ideas of a few poets find their way into society in such a catalyzing way. And I guess the lesson is to never underestimate the ideas of a poet and the work of a poet. So I just want to thank everyone for this award. And it was an act of love and devotion. And I'm very honored to have been able to contribute a little bit in recognition of the genius and the great imagination of Bob Kaufman. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond Foye. One of the winners of the American Book Award this year, Staceyann Chin. I believe she is with us today. I'm not
Raymond
sure.
Foye. I'm one of the editors of the Collected Poems.
Her work very much follows in the spirit and the dynamic of one of the revolutionary poets of the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 70s and 80s, Entezaki Shange, who coined the term chorea poem to describe the phenomenon of poetry as an engagement with the body in the form of dance, in the form of movement, that the imaginative power of the poem could reanimate the body in the spirit, not only of dance, but of a new consciousness. Staceyann Chin, Crossfire, A Litany for Survival, winner of the American Book Award this year, very much embodies this principle and this struggle. And we are very pleased to honor the work of Staceyann Chin this year with the Before Columbus Foundation's American Book Award for Crossfire, A Litany for Survival. I would now like to introduce Carla Brundage, poet and journalist, cultural activist in the Bay Area, and long-serving member of the board of directors of the Before Columbus Foundation.
Good afternoon. I'm so happy to spend this time with you, and I'm honored to present the American Book Award to Kali Fajardo-Anstine. Fajardo-Anstine, in her riveting collection of short stories, Sabrina and Corina, represents a critique of patriarchy in the most guttural and jarring way. This collection could not be more timely. For generations, US officials have neglected to investigate the frightening number of unaccounted for missing Indigenous and Latinx women. In Fajardo-Anstine's stories, what strikes the reader the most is the simmering anger so beautifully rendered and the theme of voicelessness. Yet there are moments of strength as elders who survive and raise children dole out healing, rescue, or bury their daughters. Sabrina and Corina is a moving narrative of unrelenting feminine power and an exploration of the universal experiences of abandonment, heritage, and an internal sense of home. Fajardo-Anstine's lyrical style and hard-edged language win over the reader. The voices of the disappeared call out as if from an ancient gravesite. Look, Fajardo-Anstine's women seem to say, can you see us now? I'm so honored to award this American Book Award to Kali Fajardo-Anstine.
Hi, thank you so much for this profound honor. Thank you to the Before Columbus Foundation for an American Book Award. Thank you to the judges, and thank you to all the winners of these vital and necessary books that you have written. I fell in love with books as a child, and they made me feel safe, and they were a constant companion to my mind. And because of this, I knew books were sacred. But by the time I was a young teenager, I decided that I would become a writer, and I got a job at a rare and antiquarian bookshop in Denver, and I devoured books of all sorts. It was during this time that I realized the fact that I had always intuitively known, and that is women who come from my complicated ancestral mixture, women like me who could only be created out of the American West, Indigenous and Mexican and Filipino and European, all these things layered together as one. Our lives and the specific American conditions which created us were not often in literature or prominently anywhere, official histories, school textbooks, archives. I spent much of my life feeling invisible to mainstream America. It became my ambition to know myself and my ancestors through fiction. And in doing so, I hoped my stories would illuminate what it means to be human. I have dedicated my life to literature, and I will continue to do so to the very end. I want to thank my mama and papa and my 6 siblings and my grandparents and my godmother and my ancestors who are no longer here. My agent and my friend Julia Masnick, and my editor and my friend Nicole Counts, and to Chris Jackson and everyone at One World who published this book. Long before I was a writer, I was a reader. So thank you to the great works of literature, which taught me, nurtured me, and shaped me as a person. And to my readers for finding me. You have given me the greatest gift of feeling seen and heard, of connecting and sharing our experiences. And to all the Latinas, Chicanas, and the mixed girls, and to the outcasts and the working class, and to the poor, and to the lonely, and to the high school dropouts, and to the mountains and the deserts, and to Denver. And lastly, I must say thank you to the short story form for giving me my first form. This one is for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Golly. It is not often enough that an author, a thinker, comes forward with as valiant a critique of the use of technology to reinforce principles of oppression and degradation. Many of us are surprised at this late date by the way in which so-called entertainment in popular culture can be implemented towards the ends of political violence and political control. These spheres are illuminated and given extraordinary clarity by a myriad of scholarship by the author Tara Fickle, The Race Card, From Gaming Technologies to Model Minorities. It is a great pleasure to welcome Tara Fickle, winner of the American Book Award for The Race Card, From Gaming Technologies to Model Minorities.
Hello from Eugene, Oregon. I'm so honored to be accepting this award from the Before Columbus Foundation, and even more humbled to join the ranks of current and previous award winners, so many of whom, and I'm not exaggerating, have been, unbeknownst to them, an inspiration and an aspiration. I'm sure Staceyann doesn't remember me as a college sophomore sitting riveted in the audience at Crowell Hall when she came to Wesleyan to give a reading. I'm sure that Juliana Spar doesn't know that I had my mind completely blown by the transformation when I was in graduate school. And I'm sure Ocean Vuong and George Takei and the team behind They Called Us Enemy don't know how many of my own students that they have touched when I teach their work. Really, one of the unexpected pleasures of this award was getting to scroll through the page of recipients and finding myself not just in great and familiar company, but also to get more inspiration for so many new things that I want to be reading. Another unexpected pleasure is for me to get to honor myself aloud the people who made writing this book possible. There isn't time to name everyone, but among the many, many teachers, colleagues, friends, editors, and press and funding bodies, I do want to mention my partner, Brendan O'Kelly, and my parents, Marvin Fickle and Marina Stewing. Hi, Mom. I've always wanted to do that. Something I have always admired about activists is their willingness to stand up and to speak up, to use their voices to say what people might need to hear or what they might not want to hear. I have to admit that part of the reason I became an academic is because I was better at writing down than speaking up. This book, though, is meant to speak up and to speak to many more people than just the 15 or so in my academic subfield, which is usually the best that we're told to hope for as scholars. And I will be forever grateful to the Before Columbus Foundation for seeing this book for what it wanted to be and for giving it the platform to be even more than that. I think that we all know how unique the foundation is, but I'm also amazed at how prescient it has always been. Yeah. Writing these remarks gave me a chance to go back to my copy of the Foundation's anthologies from 1991, edited by Ishmael Reed, Catherine Trueblood, and Sean Wong. And in the introduction by Catherine Sean and Gunder Strads, there was so much that could have been written today about the need to do what they call redefine the mainstream. And what they say is the very concept of a mainstream culture and a minority culture is the narrow view, even as it was and continues to be framed as the expansive view, the tolerant view, or the liberal view. And they quote Jane Cortez, the poet, who Riley noted that what gets published is minority literature. What remains unpublished is really, in fact, the mainstream. Mm-hmm. And I know academic writing is a bit different than writing novels or short stories or poetry, but I find these words and the work of the foundation itself so validating, because in academia, we writers of color have other ways of getting put in our place, being put, in other words, into the minority that really should be seen as the mainstream. You know, like any quote unquote minority writer, we also face expectations about what we should write about and how it should sound. And even when we think we're escaping those confines, even when we're trying to resist, we oftentimes just get reframed as the exception that proves the rule. So thank you once more to the foundation and to the many people who made this book possible for seeing me and this book not as the work of the minority, but of the mainstream.
Thank you so much, Tara. It's a pleasure to welcome one of our
Hello.
directors at the Before Columbus Foundation, Wahajat Ali, author and political commentator, playwright. He will be introducing Erica Lee. Wahajat Ali.
Ali, we're having trouble hearing your sound.
He's got to unmute. Have him unmute.
Yeah, Mr. Ali, could you try unmuting, please? Oh, we still can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right, great. Sorry about that, guys. I just delivered the most brilliant words you will ever hear in your life, but unfortunately you were unable to hear it, but that's okay. Thank you so much to everyone for joining the Before Columbus Foundation's 41st Annual American Book Awards. We exist and thrive despite being in a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that has killed over 220,000 Americans, mainly afflicting Black and Brown communities, those who are poor, those who are immunocompromised. In the past 4 years of this vulgarian's presidency, many people have been committed to resistance. But for the rest of us, resistance is simply telling your story. It means leaving your house. It means having joy. It means having children in the face of being erased, eliminated, or oppressed. The American Book Awards continues in its attempt to expand what it means to be an American, to push the space, to stretch, to accommodate the activists and the academics, the writers, the poets, the Black and Brown communities, those who are white but once weren't considered white, the low-income communities, the middle-class communities, those who are considered to be rapists and criminals, those who are seen as invaders. And I say all of this because our next award recipient, academic Professor Erica Lee, has done a masterful job in her book, America for Americans. I get no money from this, but I'm promoting it. America for Americans, A History of Xenophobia in the United States, to show that what we're witnessing right now under the Trump administration is simply a remake. It's a story with a new racist. It's Tag You're It, where the boogeymans have been replaced. In the past, it was the Germans. It was the Irish Catholics. It was the Eastern Europeans. Those people who are now white, who once weren't considered white. They were the invaders of the 1920s, where there was a Chinese Exclusion Act, where Japanese Americans who were born and raised in this country were seen as the invaders of the day. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the Democrat, decided to intern our fellow Japanese Americans because they were seen as a threat, where it was Mexican American laborers who were the casualty of the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act that rewarded the good immigrants. And that 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act allowed my father, who was an immigrant in Pakistan, a student, to come to this country to realize the American dream, right? It's kind of like, it's when you make the club, one of the rituals in America is you turn around and beat up the other minorities. That's how you prove your mettle. And the streets of America oftentimes aren't paved with gold, they're paved with blood. And Erica Lee, in 300 pages, as an academic, and I give her props for this, is able to tell the story of America, where so many Americans have had to fight and continue to fight to be recognized as a fellow American. And she pulls it off in a way that she connects the dots leading up to the Trump presidency and what will come after the Trump presidency. And she does it in a prose that doesn't talk down to people, it communicates to people, it explains the stories, right? So that you could sit there, whether you have a college degree or not, and you can read it and you're immersed in this history of America where she proves her case that so many of us have had to fight continuously to be recognized as an American. Some of us are still fighting. And so it shows how racism and white supremacy are the, I would say, perennial villains of America, the Thanos of America, and how it takes a multicultural coalition of the willing, I would say a multicultural Avengers, to team up to fight against it. And regardless of what happens in this election that is going to occur 9 days from now, and I hope you all vote, and if I may say this under my own prerogative, under my own opinion, please do not vote for Trump, vote for Biden. These forces that have been unleashed by Trump, the demons that have escaped Pandora's box, are the demons that have always existed and thrived in America. And it will not die a silent death. If anything, a child is most unruly before it's put to bed. And before we witness the death rattle of white supremacy, we're going to witness the death march. But it takes all of us and all of our communities to work together in tandem to recognize it, to acknowledge it, to see our roles in either resisting it, combating it, or perpetuating it, and to do our part to celebrate those voices that have been marginalized or stomped out. And we are seeing right now, where the President of the United States of America, during a moment of reckoning, instead of uplifting these voices or simply mentioning Black Lives Matter, he is trying to cancel critical race theory. Mm-hmm. He's trying to cancel our history. Mm-hmm. And that's why it is so important to keep writing our story, because there are always forces there that are willing to stomp us out. And so with every word and every page that all the recipients of the prestigious, I hope you consider it to be prestigious, American Book Award, with every word, every poem, every page that you write, you are acting like our ancestors and forefathers, and not only resisting, but creating new protagonists of the American narrative. It is a bold act of life and creation where our future generations have a chance to sit at the American table and bring our biryani next to the meatloaf, next to the chow mein, and inshallah feast at the American table and expand the tent and the table and the seats. And so it is my profound pleasure to award Erica Lee an American Book Award for America for Americans, A History of Xenophobia in the United States of America. And finally, what I will say, I will take the prerogative as the president of Before Columbus Foundation. Please, if you can, donate to the Before Columbus Foundation. We are a nonprofit. We take immense pride in the fact that we are fueled by love, by passion, and by a community of artists and writers. We do have very little money, but if you can, it's a nonprofit. Please donate to the Before Columbus Foundation. Go to our website. If we're lucky enough, inshallah, God willing, next year to be joined in person, usually you would have Ishmael literally pass around his hat, and we'll take all that money and we'll donate it to the good cause. But if you can, please do donate. It's a nonprofit, tax deductible, and support and encourage the brilliant writers, buy their works. And thank you all for joining us. And Professor Erica Lee, take it away.
Thank you so much, Wajahat Ali's introduction, and for also giving it twice. That was just really amazing. I'm very, very touched. First, I want to say congratulations to all of the award winners. I wish we were all together, but I also thank Justin and the team from the San Francisco Public Library for bringing us together virtually. And thank you so much to the award committee for choosing America for Americans for this great honor, this wonderful, prestigious award. I'm amazed to be among the company of so many wonderful authors and activists. And I'm particularly grateful to be recognized by the Before Columbus Association, a group that has been doing such important work for decades, a group that I've long admired and respected for its mission to promote freedom, to promote liberation through literature. We're coming up on an election, and this is the reason why I wrote this book. I started it in the weeks and months after the 2016 presidential election, really as a way to help my students, most of whom are first-generation immigrants and refugees, to understand what happened, to understand how we could have elected Donald Trump to be our president. And I explained that this was not a blip, that this was not an aberration, that this is part of a very long history of xenophobia and racism that's been part of the United States from the very beginning. It's one of the ways in which inequality has worked. And I've also argued that xenophobia is not just something that impacts immigrants, it hurts us all. It feeds the division, the white nationalism, the white supremacy that is already flourishing so much in our society. I hope that the message of the book not only reveals what's at stake in 9 days, but also why it's going to be so important that we keep on pushing against racism in all of its forms long after November 3rd, regardless of who wins this election. So thank you to the Before Columbus Foundation for this recognition. It means so very much to me. And thank you to all of the people who made this book possible, to Sandy Dykstra, to my editor, Brian Dilstelberg, and the whole team at Basic Books for believing in this project and making it better in every way, to my students who continue to inspire me every day, and to my family, my sisters, Laurel and Kristen, my husband, Mark, our 2 sons, Ben and Billy, who have nurtured and uplifted me during some really dark days. Thank you so much, and congratulations to all.
Thank you so much, Erica Lee. Many of the dystopic science fiction nightmares in the books of science fiction and literary masters over the last 100 years anticipated a social control mechanism that would inflict spiritual violence as well as social degradation and exploitation through the means of a vast electronic network of communications. Very few authors have come to this form with such a profound, supple, and intuitive understanding of how these systems, once in place, would attack the ability of the individual to excavate personal memory and the cartography of the interior life that was at stake under that attack. Yoko Ogawa, with her book, The Memory Police, commits to such an illumination of understanding and a wealth of courage found in her work. Again, it's a great, great honor to bring the American Book Award to Yoko Ogawa for her novel, The Memory Police, and we are joined by its translator, Professor Stephen Snyder.
Hello, my name is Steve Snyder. I have the enormous honor of translating Yoko Ogawa's novel, The Memory Police. Yoko is not able to be with us this evening, but she wanted me to read the following remarks that she sent for this occasion. First, I'd like to say that I am truly honored and delighted that The Memory Police has been selected for this wonderful award, and I want to express my heartfelt thanks to everyone who has worked to make the American Book Award possible. The fact that my novel has been able to transcend the barrier of language and move out into a wider world is due to a number of people, including the translator Stephen Snyder, my agents, and the editors. I thank all of them from the bottom of my heart. The Memory Police portrays a group of people who are trapped on an island where, for no apparent reason, their memories are being stolen from them. And yet, all the while, they strive to leave behind proof of their existence. It is my hope that the novel will have some meaning for our world today, trapped as we are by the invisible walls of the coronavirus. Finally, I can only say how deeply grateful I am for this honor. And I can only echo those sentiments and say that I too am deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Snyder. And again, congratulations to the author, Yoko Ogawa of The Memory Police. Joining us in a moment, the poet Jake Skeets, whose book, Eyes Bottled Dark with a Mouthful of Flowers, received the American Book Award this year, is one of the most extraordinary works of art and poetry published in many, many years. And by way of introduction, I would like to bring you the words of one of our longstanding directors here at Before Columbus Foundation, who presently is the Poet Laureate of the United States of America, Joy Harjo. Eyes Bottled Dark with a Mouthful of Flowers, Jake Skeets' debut book of poetry, is a study of beauty, what it needs for nourishment as it emerges from the muddy roads, railroad tracks, and other chaos slithering through a border town. It is a book that has earned through hours and lifetimes of the study of transformation. For instance, how Navajo language erupts in the field of English, how a boy can survive the squalid trauma of racial hate, how poetry can sing beauty no matter that destruction. This is one of the finest first books. It is a great, great pleasure and honor to bring the American Book Award to Jake Skeets, and we welcome him this afternoon to the 41st Annual American Book Awards.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jake.
Tate. Ja, Tate, she Matthew Jake Skeets in she sena Jenny Nishne, Tkobahan Bashichin, Skachini Dashache, Do Torikoshin Dashanella. Hello, everybody. My name is Jake, and I'm coming to you from the Navajo Nation. I first want to mention my parents, Douglas and Dorinda Skeets. My successes of this book and of my career so far belong to them first. And it's really my way of honoring the sacrifices they made to make this book possible. And thanks to the Institute of American Indian Arts, the Low Res MFA program, my mentors, Joan Kane, Shoan Bitsui, Santi Fraser, thanks to my publisher, Milkweed, they were able to walk me through the sort of strange publication process. My book also exists because of the long history of Diné literature and the Diné and Navajo writers who have come before me, writers like Lucy Tapahanto, Laura Tohi, Black Horse Mitchell, Rexley Jim, who have carried the tradition of beauty and Diné language into this world that we live in now. And also, I have to definitely mention the long history as well of Native literature and literature of Black and Indigenous people of color who have really shaped what it means to write literature today. And I should also mention that my book also exists because of tragedy and the human response to it. I spent the past year post the publication of my book negotiating and thinking through the idea of grief and how we move through grief. However, it was the grounding of myself in the physical spaces with readers across the country that made it that much easier. My collection very much relies on the stability of landscape and to help me sort of move through trauma. This American project has relied so much on the naming of this country as frontier, as border. In the Wild West or American West or the Southwest, where nations and people have mingled for centuries, this reality is very visceral. My book exists in that space, a border town in New Mexico nicknamed the Indian capital of the world in Drunktown, USA. My negotiation and contemplation of border space, alcoholism, racial violence, masculinity, found beauty and brutality through the land. From rabbit brush, juniper tree to aster fields and miles of red, orange, and brown sand. I found beauty and relied on it to carry me through the writing of this book. The land gifts us this existence, and we have to remind ourselves to gift it back. Thank you so much to the Before the Columbus Foundation. This award is an extreme honor. I'm so lucky to follow in the steps of so many who carved the path for me. Former winners like Sherwin Bitsui, Annalie Walters, Bojan Lewis, Tommy Pico. Congratulations to all here receiving this award. It's an honor to share this space with you all. And I'll just end with this. My book, Eyes Bottled Dark with a Mouthful of Flowers, opens with the epigraph in Navajo, Kodohojo Dolek, which can be translated to, from here, there'll be beauty again. And I hope that we remember to move through this world and we move forward in this world in such beaming and radiant beauty, in beauty, in beauty, in beauty, in beauty. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jake Skeets. Throughout the history of the American Book Award, the Before Columbus Foundation has brought forward many awards to works that previously were disregarded by many of the established figures who normally are considered the tastemakers in American literature and publishing. The American Book Award was one of the very first of the major awards to acknowledge the form of the graphic novel as having a profound and lasting literary merit and artistic stature, going back to the work of Art Spiegelman, but also, of course, the great Eric Drucker, who won the American Book Award for Flood. This year, in that tradition of reviving and resuscitating a larger spectrum of art forms, but also remaining prescient with what is also historically rooted in works brought to us today by Erica Lee and others, we bring the American Book Award to George Takei, Justin Eisinger, Stephen Scott, and Harmony Becker for They Called Us Enemy, George Takei's personal autobiography as told in a graphic novel of his experiences as a child being interned during the Second World War. We are joined today by the creators, along with George Takei, at Top Shelf Productions of this extraordinary work, They Called Us Enemy by George Takei.
Hi, I'm Justin Eisinger, co-author with George Takei, Stephen Scott, and illustrator Harmony Becker of the graphic novel They Called Us Enemy. Well, I'm going to start with thanking the Before Columbus Foundation for this recognition and offer congratulations to all the other winners. Working with George Takei to bring his family story to life in this graphic memoir has been an incredible honor. People often ask, what was it like to work with George Takei? To which I say, he makes you want to be a better person.
I first had the opportunity to work with George in 2012, and through getting to know him, I learned more about the internment and these atrocities against 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. And it's been George's life's mission to spread awareness about this and ensure that we never forget and we recognize the parallels to our world today.
Growing up, I didn't learn about the Japanese American incarceration in school and only discovered it while looking for books that would teach me about my heritage. It gives me hope that this story is being recognized, reassuring us that this part of American history will not be forgotten. It's so important to George and to all of us that the word American encompasses all of the experiences and stories that make this country what it is. George redefined the word patriot for me personally and taught me through his story that to be American means to fight for what our country could be, even when our ideals are not reflected in our current reality. Thank you so much for trusting us with his story. Thank you for taking a chance on a graphic novel. And thank you so much to the Before Columbus Foundation for this award.
Thank you very much again, and congratulations to George Takei, Justin Eisinger, Stephen Scott, and Harmony Becker. It is not frequent that one can describe a contemporary work as a masterpiece. However, in the case of On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous from Ocean Vuong, this is certainly the case. As I spoke of moments ago in relationship to the author Ogawa's work, the interior excavation of memory can often be the most challenging and difficult of spiritual vocations. With On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous, Ocean Vuong creates a tapestry of memory internally with a language that penetrates the sacred capabilities of pain in order to re-articulate a world of joy. It is a great honor to bring the American Book Award to On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous, and a great honor to welcome Ocean Vuong.
Hello, my name is Ocean Vuong. Thank you so much for choosing On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous as a winner of the American Book Award, and thank you also to the Before Columbus Foundation. I'm really proud to share this award with some of my heroes, including Natalie Diaz and Lee Young Lee, an award founded by Ishmael Reed. It's hard to imagine that spending hours alone at night, scratching away at the page would mean anything. You know, I think regardless of how many books you have, how many poems you write, you're really shouting into the abyss. And to have such a storied and carefully considered foundation see what you're doing as valuable is incredibly humbling to me. And I know awards are given for things that are already done, but to me, I take this as a sort of challenge to keep innovating and to keep living up to the prestige that this award bestows on me. So thank you very much, and I'm really proud to have this award.
Thank you so much, and again, congratulations to On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous from author Ocean Vuong. Joining us in a moment, Deshaun Charles Winslow. Mr. Winslow is the author of In West Mills, the novel that is very much in the tradition of the blues. And by that, I mean the tradition of telling it like it is, with wit and wisdom and the means towards survival. It is a beautiful story of the American South that is told through characters that are often considered marginal in American life and yet contain the wisdom and again the wit of survival and bringing joy through the struggle itself. It is a great honor to welcome Deshaun Charles Winslow, winner of the American Book Award for his novel In West Mills.
Hello, I'm Deshaun Charles Winslow, and I am incredibly grateful that In West Mills is one of the 2020 recipients of the American Book Award. First, I'd like to say thank you to the Before Columbus Foundation for all its hard work, and to the readers who took time out of their busy schedules to read our work. Thank you so very much. In 2015, I sat to write what was then a short story that became In West Mills. I had questions about someone from my childhood, a real-life woman named Knott, who was very special to me. And I used fiction as a way to answer the questions that I could not find. I had no idea that that short story would become a novel and that it would make it into the hands of people all around the country. I am beyond words. I want to say thank you to faculty at the Iowa Writers Workshop who gave me feedback that was invaluable. I want to thank members of my cohort who read bits and pieces along the way, and some read the whole novel when it was still a Word document. Thank you so much. You know who you are. I want to thank my agent, PJ Mark, who took a chance on me when many were not willing. I am eternally grateful. And I'm also grateful to him for introducing me and my work to Lisa Mayer at Bloomsbury Publishing. Lisa helped me carve the novel into what I really, really wanted it to be. And I am eternally grateful that it made it out into the world. Thank you again, everyone, so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Deshaun Charles Winslow, again, winner of the American Book Award for In West Mills. There can be little doubt that in the United States of America, police forces at the local, state, and federal level have never hesitated to inflict the most brutal forms of punishment and dismemberment upon the American people as part of this effort to destroy and dismember, degrade. There have been survivors. There have been people who have not only lived through this terror, but also contributed to the lives of those who not only survived, but also to help understand how to evade this fate. Among the many tools of punishment that are the most egregious is the use of solitary confinement, something that, to be sure, ought to be regarded as cruel and unusual punishment and therefore banned by the Constitution of the United States. The novel Solitary the autobiographical text, the book Solitary by Albert Woodfox with Leslie George, is a tale of survival, but also a tale of joy, perseverance, and spiritual revival. It's a great honor to bring the American Book Award to Albert Woodfox and Leslie George for this great gift of courage and perseverance that they have shared with our world. And please welcome Albert Woodfox.
Hi, my name is Albert Woodfox. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Before Columbus Foundation for honoring my book, Solitary, with the American Book Award. I am deeply honored. I wrote Solitary because I wanted to expose the horrors and torture of solitary confinement that's being used in prison systems in America and around the world. Solitary confinement has no purpose other than to destroy the human being, to destroy his spirit, his dignity, his pride, his self-respect.
Again, it is a great honor to bring this very vital book, the American Book Award this year. And again, my thanks to Albert Woodfox for participating in this afternoon's ceremony, and also to Leslie George for helping us to bring Albert Woodfox to you. Joining us in a moment, the founder of the Before Columbus Foundation, Ishmael Reed, who will be honoring Eleanor Traylor for Lifetime Achievement. it is a great pleasure to welcome Ishmael Reed to the 41st Annual American Book Awards.
Thank you very much, Justin, and thanks for all your hard work. So how do I talk about Eleanor Traylor, emeritus from Howard University, and one of our outstanding literary critics. Eleanor Traylor is a member of the Black aristocracy, and she could have spent her life planning cotillions and garden parties. But instead, she wandered into the snake pit of American letters. Her point of view arises from her being both an observer and an insider of two revolutions in American literature. While some of the writings about Black arts leave much to be desired, Dr. Traylor not only has written about Black arts, but was a participant and a confidant of some of the Black arts pioneers. If after years of its being denounced by mainstream critics, Black arts is now trending with a large payroll devoted to conferences, workshops, course adoptions, Eleanor Traylor is responsible because she never lost faith in a movement that changed American literature. You know that Black arts has become the vogue because one of those who's been criticizing the movement, calling it short-lived, is helping to finance its revival. But that is not the only revolution in the arts in which Dr. Traylor participated. She was co-editor with Tony K. Bambara, author of the classic The Salt Eaters, in an anthology, The Black Woman, which was a landmark book which helped to launch Black feminist criticism. It's heralded what its editor later named an Afro-femme view of the world. In the collection of poetry, stories, and essays, that is the anthology, a definition of this worldview emerges, I'm quoting, as a sensibility, not as an ism. Its awareness explores first the inferiority of an in the head, in the heart, in the gut region of discovery called the self. It tests the desires, the longings, the aspirations of this discovered self with and against its possibilities for respect, growth, fulfillment, and accomplishment. It finds a sisterly empathy with the complementary selves. And she talks about Cade, Cook, Robinson, Lindsay, Giovanni, and Grant. This voice was echoed throughout the world. It's like a manifesto. When I visited China, it was obvious that women scholars in Chinese universities had been influenced by Black American feminism. I heard an Egyptian student say that she read bell hooks in a library in Egypt and it changed her life. If Black feminism has become or has a global outreach, Dr. Eleanor Traylor is one of those responsible. I mentioned her name recently in an exchange with two individuals who have the power to influence trends in Black literature. I challenge the two approaches that are used to define Black literature by their publications. Columbusing. A critic wrote that William Melvin Kelly had been forgotten. Forgotten? I have photos of Kelly and his family attending Black Renaissance Noir events toward the end of his life. Another approach is to provide a Black writer with a guardian. In one magazine, they wrote that Wanda Coleman was indebted to Walt Whitman. I knew Wanda Coleman and published Wanda Coleman. She had nothing to do or had nothing in common with Walt Whitman. So why does the establishment find some tokens like myself acceptable while Black critics are still in the Negro Leagues? Because they view Black literature in the context of a Black tradition, which mainstream critics have yet to acknowledge. Also, their criticism is neglected because the Negro Leagues were always capable of striking out the majors. Dr. Eleanor Traylor.
And I'm not sure if Eleanor Traylor was able to join us this afternoon. Oh, here she is. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
That was fabulous, Mr. Founder. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Board of Directors, founding genius of the Before Columbus Foundation. My heart sings to receive this most envied and cherished award. I believe in miracles because 2, now 3, have informed my life. The first is to have been born to a parentage who has modeled gloriously the agonizing and the splendid struggle for the great goodness of life. The second is to have been born into the generation that founded this award. And the third is to receive its gift, this completely stunning, outrageously generous award from a foundation that embodies the quintessential elements of that generation. For its poets, this generation was and is not to be understood as a subset of boomers or Xers. Rather, it is a distinction all its own as a voice that disturbs horror and brings life to an unlikely place. As Sun Ross said of John Coltrane, this generation effected a molecular rearrangement of sound, syntax, rhythm, and expectations. For Don L. Lee becoming Haki Ara Madhubuti, it is to be understood as a forger of clear language, able storytellers, a discoverer of crops and seeds, a decipherer and investigator of ideas and promise, a keeper of memory and moments, melody and song, expanding vision in search of winning ways and noble tomorrows. All manner of men and language and custom and ritual, one cosmic jam session I see, sang Larry Neal. Its ultimate praise song is personified by Nikki Giovanni singing, "I'm so hip, even my errors are correct." I met the founding genius of this definitive generation when we were younger than young, and he had already written the game-changing work that rerouted the writing of fiction in America and perhaps the world. The work regarded as the counter-narrative of African-American victimization and avatar of African-American speculative writing, now called Afrofuturism. It was a beauteous evening, calm and free, as many of his generation had gathered at a writers' conference called by his brilliant late prosodist, Dr. Stephen Henderson at Howard University. After the final session, a few had gathered at my house to eat a pot of black-eyed peas with rice and chicken and plantain I'd prepared. Music had given way to high-flying stories and greets and meets. When Maya Angelou arrived, and with her, the tallest, blondest person on the planet, hauling an equally tall bass instrument. After the shock of amazement, it became clear that we were in for a concert treat. Just as the cellist undressed the instrument and began to prepare it, I zipped to the kitchen to stir the pot of warming peas. I had arrived at the stove when I heard a loud squawk, followed by a shriek. Simultaneously, there was a thump as if something fell to the floor. one hand over mouth, the other over eyes, in an effort not to make a sound, while desperately rolling on the floor, imprisoned in a paroxysm of sheer glee, was the erudite poet whose identity already swung like a pendulum from cowboy on the boat of Ra to wardrobe master of paradise to gumbo chef. It was he who would inspire the unrepeatable Before Columbus Foundation, offering the American Book Award. But then he was a helpless, hapless member of what would be called the Great Generation, rolling on a tiny kitchen floor with me, collapsed at the refrigerator door. We dared not utter a sound. We would be misunderstood. We were not laughing at the cellist or at her rebellious instrument. We were laughing, perhaps, at nothing less than absurdity its very self. Mercifully, the instrument behaved, the cellist performed, and when the concert ended, the founding genius of this moment took charge of serving the famished company on that evening to the pleasure of all and the extreme gratitude of one. From the earliest time I knew him until this very moment, his genius was always a healing power. To my fellow awardees who are my betters, please accept my heartfelt congratulations. Mr. Chairman, Board of Directors, dear, dear, irrepressible keeper of the sacred fire, please accept my deepest appreciation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Eleanor Traylor, winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Before Columbus Foundation. This year, for the first time, the Before Columbus Foundation extends the American Book Award into online publishing, bringing our editor award to the Panopticon Review and to its author and editor, Kofi Ntambu. Kofi Ntambu stands in the tradition of many of the great publishers in African America, including the founders of the Chicago Defender and the Amsterdam News. It is a great pleasure to bring, for the first time, the Editor Award to online publishing, honoring Kofi Ntambu and his Panopticon Review. Kofi joins us this afternoon as his audio acceptance speech to today's American Book Awards.
Hello, everyone, and congratulations to all my fellow honorees. I would like to personally thank those responsible for sponsoring and sustaining the American Book Awards for bestowing this honor in recognition of my work with the Panopticon Review. It is always deeply edifying and encouraging to have the value of one's work publicly acknowledged and supported, and especially by one's peers. As in any serious effort worth his name, it must also be acknowledged that no one accomplishes anything worth doing alone. So in that spirit and in recognition of that essential fact in both my work and my life, I would like to share a few names of some individuals, many of whom I have been fortunate enough to have actually known and worked with over many years, who never failed to inspire me and creatively affect what I do and why. Inevitably, as in any list, it is not possible to name everyone I would like to personally thank. So I trust that those whom I know and value, who are not named here, will know and appreciate that I still deeply value them and their work as well. So in that spirit, and in no particular order, I would like to personally especially mention and thank the following individuals for having a significant and powerful ongoing impact on my life and work, and especially that of the Panopticon Review and Sound Projections. They are C.L.R. James, W.E.B. Du Bois, or is that Dubois, Timothy Muhammad, Cynthia Hamilton, Amiri Baraka, Lorenzo Thomas, Bob Kaufman, John A. Williams, Gerald Horn, Gloria House, Bob Moses, Malcolm X, Ella Baker, Paul Robeson, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Karl Marx, Ida B. Wells, Jane Cortez, June Jordan, Ann Petrie, Tony K. Bambara, Toni Morrison, Will Alexander, Amilcar Cabral, Edward Said, Sadia Hartman, Amani Perry, Nathaniel Mackey, Richard Wright, Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, Michelle Alexander, Adrian Kennedy, Paul Beatty, Angela Davis, Octavia Butler, Farouk Zibay, Quincy Troop, Chester Himes, Isabel Wilkerson, Brian Stevenson, William Melvin Kelly, Robin D.G. Kelly, Cedric Robinson, Fred Moten, Frank B. Wilderson III, Bill Harris, Carol Harris, George Tish, Chris Tish, Tyrone Williams, Rayfield Waller, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Antonio Gramsci, Bertolt Brecht, Michel Foucault, Amy Césaire, Frantz Fanon, Walter Rodney, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, AACM, especially Muhal Richard Abrams, Art Ensemble of Chicago, Roscoe Mitchell, Anthony Braxton, Wadada Leo Smith, and George E. Lewis, etc., et al., as well as the entire modern jazz tradition from both the so-called mainstream and avant-garde expressions alike from circa 1890 to the present, and the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, especially Kenny Cockrell, General Baker, and Mike Hamlin. Finally, first, last, and always, I must celebrate and thank a very special person whose love, friendship, unwavering support, counsel, compassion, insight, humor, wit, and endless generosity I have been and remain happily reliant on for many wonderful years now. I am very fortunate to not only be her marital partner, but someone who also cherishes her exemplary example as a writer, visual artist, editor, and human being who continues to deeply inspire and spur me on to greater heights no matter what. Her name is Shulinan. Thank you for everything, honey. I know you know this already, but it bears repeating nonetheless. I love you with all my heart and soul. And thanks again, American Book Awards, for the very important and essential work that you do.
Again, thank you so much to Kofi Ntambu, and congratulations to Mr. Ntambu for the Editor Award for the Panopticon Review. Based in Oakland, California, Commune Editions is one of the great gifts to our world, and certainly one of the most courageous and valiant of publishers in the United States today and throughout the world. It is a great harvest of literature that they bring to us, and a welcoming vision beyond the ordinary baby talk of the so-called two-party system in American politics, far beyond the Jekyll and Hyde conundrums of principle and interest. It is a great pleasure to welcome the founding editors of Commune Editions, Joshua Clover and Juliana Spar. And again, congratulations to Commune Editions for the Publisher Award from the American Book Awards Before Columbus Foundation. Joshua Clover.
I want to thank the SFPL and the ABA, and thank Ishmael and also Justin for reaching out to us with the news, which is thrilling. Juliana is going to talk for a minute when I'm done about this award and Before Columbus Foundation after I say some thank yous. I want to say thanks to the people who helped us make the books and who helped us fold and staple chapbooks and who helped us distribute them and who offered us their artwork, especially Amzie Emmons and Tim Simons, who did the original design. And thanks to the Bay Area poetry community, but also to readers and friends all over the world. We're not sure what this award could mean, except as a recognition of all of our authors. So we want, most importantly, to thank them all. And by all, we mean those who wrote books and who wrote chapbooks, and Wendy Trevino, who contributed one of each. We mean translators as much as authors, translators who played an equal part in bookmaking and helping us reach beyond our own limits, cultural, national, linguistic, and others. And we want to thank the living and the dead. Not all of our authors are still alive. Our very first chapbook comprised 3 untranslated texts by Louise Michel. She had been dead for more than a century at the time. The incomparable Italian revolutionary Nanni Balestrini passed at 84 last spring. We had the honor of publishing his first book of poetry to be translated into English. And finally, the great poet Sean Bonney passed last fall at just 50 years of age. He was a friend and a comrade, and we miss him. We're sad that he did not live to see the George Floyd rebellion. I'll end with his words, the last words from a poem of his called ACAB, a Nursery Rhyme. Say no justice, no peace, and then say fuck the police. Juliana has a thing or two to add.
Hey, I just wanted to add here that of all the honors in the world of letters, the one from Before Columbus Foundation is the one that we would most want to receive. Its history is an alternative to what for years was the mainly white literary prize. Its refusal of the economy of fees to enter, and the many amazing writers it has allotted over the years, writers that have often been overlooked by the literary establishment. The Before Columbus Foundation has done so much to recognize the diversity of American literature, its community ties, its crucial politics, its activism. And all of this has been so generous, and we're very proud to be recognized by it and really humbled by the company, which includes so many heroes. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Juliana and Joshua, for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Coming up in a moment, Amalia Ortiz, who is the recipient of the Oral Literature Award this year. The Before Columbus Foundation and the American Book Awards in recent years has expanded to include a category that embraces the performance and theater of poetry, as well as oral literature in its non-literate forms, those who perform without the book. In the case of Amalia Ortiz, it is both a playwright, a performer. Amalia Ortiz's most recent work, Cannibal Cabaret and Other Songs, is part of her performance, and we are very honored to present the Oral Literature Award to Amalia Ortiz, who joins us this afternoon.
Hi, I'm Amalia Ortiz, and I want to begin by thanking the Before Columbus Foundation for this award and for their ongoing mission of promoting diversity in the publishing world. My hybrid book of poetry, which I staged as a punk rock musical, The Canción Cannibal Cabaret, tells the story of a queer Chicanx post-apocalyptic refugee who rises to lead an army of marginalized folks in revolution against an oppressive state. Like La Madre Valiente, I am now aware of the army of people I am indebted to for supporting the book, stage performances, videos, and creating a project which is larger than one person. And so you have to bear with me as I go through all of the names, because this is a community, a family, and in South Texas, we like to roll into the party with a whole uninvited crew, and so here they are. Thanks to Anissa Onofre and Juan Tejeda of Aztlan Libre Press for saving this book. Thanks to my mentor, thesis chair, and now the Texas Poet Laureate, Emmy Bettis, who supported performance as a part of this MFA beyond the page. Also, thesis committee member Dr. Marcy McMahon is also due thanks, along with Dr. Catherine Josefina Merla Watson and Dr. Ben Olguin, who were also awarded an American Book Award in 2018 for their anthology of speculative fiction, Altermundos, which featured a large excerpt of my Canción Cannibal Cabaret. I need to thank the cast of the CCC, past and present, Danielle Lopez, Robbie Cruz, Gladys Ornelas, Amanda Victoria Ramirez, Dan Fluter, Maria Ibarra, Isela Guzman, Jacqueline Salome, Lilith Tejerina, Leti Rocha Zhivadinovich, Lorenzo Beas, Joaquin Muerte, Juan Miguel Ramos, choreographer Renee Nene Gonzalez, and lastly in the cast, rounding up the cast, my director of music, my first and best reader, my husband and bass player, Dr. Kip Austin Hinton. Thanks to the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures for the grant, which allowed me to document filming music videos at the South Texas border wall. And thanks to Pepe Garcia Gilling for directing that video project. In the late 80s and 90s, I got turned on to the punk spoken word poets, Patti Smith, Jim Carroll, Maggie Estep, Henry Rollins, Lydia Lunch. I want to thank the early Lollapalooza poets, Michelle Serros and Luis Alfaro, for doing spoken word at a time when all I saw were white faces. You showed me there was room in the genre for me, and I didn't have to try to sound white to claim it. Thanks to other writers who taught me the value of the poetry within my own community, dub poet Linton Kwesi Johnson and poet scholar Gloria Anzaldúa. Thanks to those who make space for POC Punk. Thank you, Black and Brown Punk Festival and Chingonas in the Pit, curator and founder Daisy Salinas. This work is not simply mimetic of white dominant punk aesthetic, but is drawn from POC culture, in my case, border culture, border vocabulary, lived border experience, and border histories. So I need to thank Porfirio R. Ortiz and Guadalupe R. Ortiz for laying roots on the border off of Main Street, La Feria, Texas, just 2 miles or so from the Rio Grande River, which complicated my life in the best way possible. The introduction of this book lays out the abbreviated thesis defense of my aesthetics, claiming space for all that I am in academia. Chicanx, intersectional feminist, queer, punk, spoken word poet. Thank you to Ponquera scholar, Dr. Marlon Rios Hernandez, for responding to a complete stranger when I reached out for a book blurb. You are an hermana from another mother. I want to dedicate this award to the memory of the great Rudolfo Anaya, who I feel in my gut had something to do with bringing this book to the attention of the Before Columbus Foundation. Last summer, my publisher passed on a handwritten letter that would have been flattering to receive from any fan, but it knocked the wind out of me to see it was signed by Rudolfo Anaya. His passing this summer was a huge loss to American literature, and so to his family, to his legacy, I owe never-ending thanks. The dystopia I imagined in this queer Chicanx post-apocalyptic musical was meant to warn what the world could become should women, POC, and marginalized people continue suffering inequity to larger and larger disproportions. The book began way before the Trump presidency, and in the years since his election and subsequent publishing of the book, I have felt that dystopia becoming more and more of a reality. If walls continue to close in, threatening those on the margins, I urge you to vote, gather in solidarity, and if all else fails, unite to destroy the oppressive state which threatens the soul of our democracy. La Madre Valiente wants you.
Thank you so much, Amalia. And I would like to encourage our audience to take the time to discover Amalia Ortiz online. There is a wealth of video presentation throughout the internet that will bring you the power of her extraordinary gifts as a poet, as a performer, as a musician. Again, thank you to Amalia Ortiz, recipient of the Oral Literature Award. And again, to echo Wahajat Ali's earlier statement, I would encourage all of you to visit us on the internet at Before Columbus Foundation and encourage you all to give generously to the Before Columbus Foundation. We are certainly grateful for any donations that we can receive. You can find us at beforecolumbusfoundation.com. As we conclude the ceremony for the annual American Book Awards, I would like to bring all of our attention to the Walter and Lillian Lowenfels Criticism Award, which this year is going to Appalachian Reckoning, A Region Responds to Hillbilly Elegy, edited by Anthony Harkins and Meredith McCarroll. As the master playwright, the late master playwright Tennessee Williams said in his Sweet Bird of Youth, it takes a hillbilly to take down a hillbilly. And in the struggle to bring some kind of counter valence to the intentions to control the discovery of the culture of Appalachia coming out of Washington, D.C. and the loudmouths in New York, this particular work really does the lion's share of that work in illuminating the struggle of the people who actually live there, rather than capitulating to what New York publishers or politicians in Washington, D.C. would like us to believe about the population there. And so by way of a introduction, I'll read the words from Nancy Eisenberg, a past winner of the American Book Award. In this illuminating and wide-ranging collection, the authors do more than just debunk the simplistic portrayal of white poverty found in Hillbilly Elegy. They profoundly engage with the class, racial, and political reasons behind a Silicon Valley millionaire's sudden triumph as the most popular spokesman for what one contributor cleverly calls Trumpalachia. This book is a powerful corrective to the imperfect stories told of the white working class, rural life, mountain folk, and the elusive American dream. So we are joined this afternoon in acceptance of the Criticism Award for Appalachian Reckoning, a region responds to Hillbilly Elegy, by its editors Anthony Harkins and Meredith McCarroll.
Hello, I'm Tony Harkins.
And I'm Meredith McCarroll. Together, we co-edited Appalachian Reckoning, a region response to Hillbilly Elegy. We're honored to accept the Walter and Lillian Lowenfels Criticism Award. They remind us that it is important to push back and challenge simplistic perceptions and that popular notions are not always correct.
This book was born out of both frustration and of hope. Frustration with the ways the attention garnered by J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy was, yet again, promoting a simplistic and monolithic vision of the people and the region, and the hope that we could provide a space for a more complex and nuanced representation of Appalachia that recognized that there is no single truth about it. We sought to create a platform for challenging regional stereotypes, forthrightly facing social and economic problems, and exploring what it means to be Appalachian in the 21st century.
This included scholarly responses to Hillbilly Elegy, but also a broad range of Appalachian writers who, just by sharing their stories, complicate the narrow story often told about this place. As we wrote in the introduction of the book, we hope that this collection reminds us all that there is and always has been space to differ, to disagree, to protest, to rage, to reimagine, to commemorate, and to reclaim Appalachia as it is for us.
Now, this project was definitely a very collective one, and we have many people we'd like to thank. We are grateful to the incredible group of nearly 40 contributors, some of whom we see here, who came together for this project and on whose behalf we accept this award. Scholars, poets, photographers, and writers all contributed to this book in many ways that challenges both the idea of a monolithic region and challenges traditional academic boundaries.
We want to thank Emily Satterwhite for her support and her abiding friendship, and a special shout out to Teresa Burris, who was instrumental in selecting and organizing many of the contributions to the collection, and to Roger May and his Looking at Appalachia photography project, who helped give voice to our desire to see the book as a project of bridge building.
I want to gratefully acknowledge the financial and emotional support from the history department at Western Kentucky University, and above all to my wife Tracy for her support of the project from conception to fruition in countless ways.
And many thanks to my colleagues at Bowdoin College, and especially to my family, my partner Jeff, and our sons Towns and Jasper, for their good humor and energetic support. We're also grateful to our supporters at West Virginia University Press, Andrew Brzezinski's, Derek Krisoff, Abby Freeland, Jeremy Wang Iverson, and Sarah Monroe have all been instrumental in getting this book out into the world of readers. We're delighted that the book has achieved the ends we sought and reached a broad audience eager for a deeper understanding of the region and its diversity of people and stories of struggle, perseverance, and even joy. Thanks to the Before Columbus Foundation for finding value in this collection, and thanks especially to our readers who took the time to think about this region in a complicated way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Meredith McCarroll and Anthony Harkins. And thank again to all of you for joining us this afternoon for the 41st Annual American Book Awards. And I'll look forward to seeing you next year.